Good day folks, and welcome to my channel. Thanks for checking out this video. My name is Ben. I produce and perform electronic experimental ambient music, and through this video I will present one of my tracks, break it down so you can see how everything is being processed individually and arranged together. So on that note, let's get to it. So here we have this 6-minute long track in Ableton Live, and we're looking at the arrangement view. I've got all my individual tracks on the right here, and the associated samples for each track laid out on the arrangement window just in the center. I've also grouped some of these tracks and individual components of the group, so sub-tracks are within this zone here under the main group window. I'm going to go ahead and remove the names of each sample in the arrangement to clean it up, make it look a little nicer. As you can see, I've got different colors for each individual track, and this is typical of dragging and dropping a sample just into the arrangement view at the beginning of my process. I have the auto color assignment in the properties turned on. A suggestion would be to come up with a color scheme that works with your production process and makes sense to you. So I'll go ahead and play the track all the way through. This video will give you a good understanding of what it's like to work in Ableton Live. So here I have the main portion of the song. All of these individual tracks all playing at once gives it a thick, full sound, and there is an intro leading up to this portion, and we've got the main body and an outro component right here playing out the outro. With one of these auto filter envelopes from a higher frequency down to a lower frequency, so it's pulling back the high frequencies as we exit the song. So let's go ahead and play the track. All right, so that was the track. I'm going to take you through each individual component of the track, and we'll break it down. We'll see how it's all processed, and then we'll be able to get a good understanding on how we came to get that sound. So I'll take you through the track from beginning to end. We'll start with the intro components and then move to the main, and we'll dissect each individual component throughout. So we have these individual tracks here. So we've got this recorded sample here. We will take a look at what's being processed. In EQ, we'll turn it off and we'll listen to it without the EQ and unwarped. I personally like the sound of the warped audio with these transient markers. It adds a glitchiness to the audio that I really appreciate. And once I've warped the sample, I typically leave them in. Looks like I left in the warp markers as well. I like to do that. I like to warp things and then change the BPM, and it adds kind of glitchiness to it. That's kind of unpredictable. And oh, it looks like actually maybe a recording of a sample from a library. So I could have used a granular synthesizer. That was probably using Monolake's Granulator 2. And then here, it's the exact same sample. See the names here. And then I've pitched it up an octave. And it's definitely a very slow BPM. I've got my total BPM at 40. Which also, as I was producing the track at the beginning, I was adding bass and drum elements at like 120 beats per minute, and then I dropped it down to 40, which gave it a really glitchy tone, which we'll see in the drums in just a moment. And this is the same thing, a sample that I resampled, actually a few samples when I had initially started out with maybe 3 or 4 sounds. So that's a resample. And then a warp. It looks like I doubled. Yeah, I multiplied by 2 the length of the sample. Actually, as you can see here, this is pretty much that sample chopped up as well. And this sample here, again, a resample. And here I've actually got... What's making it so crunchy is it's the exact same sample, actually, and I've rolled off the high and the low frequencies, and then I've added an amp. So if we turn off the amp and turn off the high, let's drop the volume on that, or the amplitude. Okay, so I've definitely slowed that down and added these elements. Drop that amplitude down before playing it, of course. And it looks like I got some automation on my gain knob. That's another thing too. I like to put a utility on all of my tracks and automate the utility. Instead of automating the level control of the channel, because then if I want to make modifications to all the tracks all at once by hitting Control A or Command A and selecting all, and then just going up and down, I can make global modifications to the amplitude. That's a good trick to keep in your back pocket. And then yeah, when I get to the end, that component as well is the outro. I like to bookend my tracks. A lot of the same thing at the intro. It leaves us on the outro to kind of tell a story. And it looks like we've got this other sample, resample here, leading us into the main component. Again, heavily processed. A lot of filtering leading into the track's apex. Gotta make sure you're on the right track. So that is a resample. As you can see, the waveform is similar to this one and this one. So it is a resample, and it looks like we have it pitched up 12 semitones, so an octave, and then again heavily processed. I really love Amp. I use Amp a lot especially when I'm lazy and I don't want to route audio out to outboard gear or guitar amps or pedals. All right, nothing happens there. It's just pretty much plays at that same level with those effects through the whole main portion of the song. So going back up, now we have some percussive elements and some synths up top here, and some, looks like probably some noise, and the same sort of thing down there. So what I'm actually going to do, I'm just going to drag this up here above these intro parts so I can kind of work up here. All right, let's go back up to the top here. We have some grouped percussive elements. Let's just take a look. Okay, so that is definitely an extended out drum. So if I unwarp, as you see, when I unwarp that, I'll just undo that. It's stretched along the arrangement and the grid. So if I unwarp it and listen to it, so that's obviously from a sample bank, and I'm running at 40 BPM. It's definitely a whole lot slower than the initial. And so what happens is we get these little transient markers here where the audio has glitched. And Ableton believes that that is a transient that we're gonna want to have on the beat. So it's trying to find that beat and identify it. And when we glitched it, it gave it a transient where it might not otherwise, where there might not otherwise be one. So that adds an interesting element. And then it also I could take my audio and just straight up stretch it along the timeline and do some other crazy things, like if I wanted to really accentuate that beginning and make it sound really glitchy. Super cool glitchy sound. So I didn't obviously go that exaggerated on this sample, but that's that one. Let's move on to this snare component. So here I've got a snare hit. Let's just turn these all off. I've got a snare hit going into my return A, my reverb. I've got a reverb here running, and as you saw, I had it in eco mode, economy, and I moved it to high quality while we were playing the track. So I've got it maxed at the wet, as it is a return, or a send, sorry, and we've got the decay time super high, and the size high, and I'm rolling off the highs and the lows. I left the chorus and the spin on as a default parameter, and I just was kind of throwing this track together at its initial stage. I typically turn these off because I don't like a lot of chorus and early reflection spins in my reverb reflections, but I was all right with it here. Left it on. It sounds fine. And so anyways, we've got that same sort of thing too. This would have been a higher BPM, so we've got this kind of glitchy sound with a long tail going into a heavy reverb, which just sounds super big and super cool. And we're taking off, cutting out a bit of the low end at 184 hertz. Looks like I rolled, or I dipped a little bit on the high ends. And my utility and limiter, again, utility just to automate amplitude envelopes for the track. All right, we'll play those together. All right, and then we've got this one down here. Again, same thing. These are all percussive elements meant for a faster track, and then when you slow it down, you get all these transients because it glitches them out. Oh, I actually have this. I'm not even playing this part of the track. All right. I'm just going to go ahead and delete that. So when putting together tracks, sometimes you just try different things, and some things end up staying in your the end track, and then you just clean up at the end. We've got this. So this is a sampler or simpler, whichever one it is, running with some notes that I thought worked with the sample, whichever sample I started out with. So I wanted to add a couple of different notes. So this is in the percussive group. Really should be outside the percussive group, maybe at the end when I clean it up. It will be. But either way, just a little sample with no processing. It's not even running through my reverb or anything, so just something simple. And then here we've got another sample of that exact same thing. Okay, I've got it turned off, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that anyways. That's a resample. Sometimes I like to do that as well if I want to just get rid of, blow away the instrument and just deal with the sample. But I'll leave both of them sometimes till the end when I'm doing this kind of work, cleaning it up. And let's take a look at the other one. It's actually, all three of them look similar. This looks like, based on the convention, the naming conventions of samples, it looks like I just took three of the same samples and just did different things to them. Here I'm processing it with an amp and running it through my reverb here. Together it sounds like this lush kind of sequence. And down here. A rhythmic octave bass. I don't typically use presets just because I have this like problem with them. I like to, give myself some kind of credit at the end, for creating the sound, but really, just slap something down. Play around with it later, slap something down, look at the arrangement, listen to it, great, and then figure out the subtlety of tweaking components of that sound at the end. This actually left me in paralysis for many years in producing. I just couldn't come to grips with creating my own sound from the ground up. In fact, it got me to a point where I wanted to then create my own instruments. Then I wanted to go back even further and create my own, mechanism to produce sound, meaning the computer. I wanted to create my own computer, and then it just got kind of weird after that. And saying that it left me in paralysis, I wasn't producing or performing for many years because of that. I couldn't wrap my head around it. So just use presets off the hop and find what works for you. Your sound will come out in the arrangement, in the production, and in the end. So just throw something down, use it, go with it. All right, so it looks like I got this saw filter bass. Again, preset, sweet. as you just heard, I just slammed that. Sorry about that, I've hurt your ears, but I got this super low, so it's not really adding anything to my track. In fact, it could kind of inhibit my abilities to get as much out of the amplitude at the end of the track when I'm mastering it, because it's noise. It's got some content to it. Let's just take a quick look at the low frequency content, which is the heaviest on your system when you're mastering it. And when I say your system, I mean your EQ system. So I do have some low end content that is going to take away from my headroom at the end. So I could decide to just pull this completely out, but I did find the whole track at the end, you know, it sounded really good. So I might just leave this in, but either way, it's just this little sequence that's doing some things that jive with the overall sound. And it looks like maybe this might be similar. I got this up at minus 8 dB. Okay, this is analog. I probably started with the default sound and then just chose some triangle shapes. And then I'm running it through no processing really. For some reason I got this little bit into the reverb. But of course an arpeggiator running at 1/12 rate. Okay. And again, this is extremely low, so it's probably not adding anything to my track. I might decide to just get rid of this as well, but either way, ultimately the track sounds great on all platforms that I've tried, so I might just leave it as is. Same thing, playing around with analog with some notes. Here I'm going through reverb and sample here. It looks like another resample. We may have heard this already, so let's just take a look. So that looks like just a pitched down version of the resample. Let's hear it pitched up. Yeah, that's the same thing as the other one. So we'll just leave that as is. Sounds great. Going through an amp with the rock preset. Again, these are defaults. Like I really just kind of just throw things together quickly sometimes when I'm processing. So here I've just got it on default settings with this rock, and then I just added a little bit of wet. So it gives it some tone. All right. And then this analog running through an auto filter. And again, this is another thing that I do. I've got some pretty sweet PCs, I guess, for this kind of thing, and Macs for this thing. So I can deal with multiple sound effects, but really, if I'm not automating the filter that much, I could just automate it here in the instrument itself in analog. Automate both filters if I wanted to. Sometimes it's easier just to obviously throw down an audio effect and just use the one component of it, but either way. So this is just a pitched up 1 octave above this piece here. And then I open the filter up. And then of course I'm going through my reverb at 100%. Move on to the next. So actually, as you see here, before we move on to the next, contact. So I don't have the contact library that I used for this on this computer, but I ended up sampling it out here below, and I left that one there. So we'll just go ahead and delete that. And I did that same thing down here as well. I just had it collapsed. Those are the actual notes that these samples have recorded from. So, and here I was using, let's take a listen. So obviously I've got a filter on that cutting out the low end, and that is some strings. That sounds like Session Strings Pro from Native Instruments. And here, same thing, Session Strings Pro and a low string. And the higher string here, I've got it hitting some higher frequencies, dropped off the low end because I wanted to save some amplitude, and also I wanted it to really cut through the mix. And then for this portion as well, similar to the above, I've got it pitched up an octave. So I just highlighted that, hit Control E, which is the shortcut for the cutting function. And I like to cut things up and make it look, you know, blocky like Lego. Kind of help me understand what it's doing. So in a perfect world also I would have this, you know, named like this, plus 12 maybe. And this is the same, this is in fact the exact same thing as that. So the only thing I would lose from that is actually being at 0 amplitude. I get a bit of obviously the tail of that one that one note. So what do we got here? We got no processing on either one. And they're not going through any of my sends or anything. And another beat. I got a stray beat here. Same sort of thing, but this one is going through some heavy reverb. And then that's from the intro, which we heard earlier. Oh, I'm gonna go back to this beat. Got this reverb here, is in fact on the channel, as well as running through the reverb in the send effect rack. So that obviously makes it really big. Turn it off. So that's the same thing. Put this drum down at a 120 BPM and then dropped it, and then I get these glitchiness elements, and then throw it through a reverb. And I get something that sounds super big. Alright, so that's the track all the way through, dissecting each individual component, taking a look at how they're all processed. And just to go back, these are samples. A lot of them that are used here are samples that have been taken from a sample library at some point, just dragged and dropped, and then changed the BPM of the overall track to make some cool percussive kind of glitchiness elements, and then ran through some reverb, and then I add some resamples of the entire track into each individual channel, then manipulate them, and then we have some instruments, some samplers using those same samples processed again through the different avenues to add different elements to the sound to color this track. Alright folks, so thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like and comment below. Also, if you'd like to see other videos similar to this in the future on music production, I've got a whack of videos coming soon, so please subscribe to my channel. Thanks and have a good day. Bye-bye.